Welcome to the Biblical Calendar Movement 2020-2030, the true biblical calendar restoration movement, the unimpeachable calendar plan for 2020 to 2030. A brief history of calendar reform in our era and the only solution to the problem today. The Gregorian calendar reformation and the League of Nations. The past 400 years have seen a handful of cohesive efforts to standardize the modern calendar and iron out the inaccuracies of the solar Gregorian calendar created in 1582 to replace the decadent Julian calendar. In 1922, the League of Nations appointed a committee of inquiry to study the question of calendar reform. More than 130 different proposals were submitted to the committee, but the Cosworth Plan was the one outstanding proposal which had already been endorsed by a number of business organizations. George Eastman, the champion of calendar modernization. The crusade for calendar modernization under the League of Nations found one of its most prominent champions in 19th century industrialist George Eastman, the founder of the Eastman Kodak Company. Driven by a desire to create a more business-friendly calendar, he developed the Eastman Plan similar to Cosworth Plan. It was one of the first cogent models of a fixed or permanent calendar and was designed to eliminate the practical and financial inefficiencies generated by the Gregorian calendar system. His niece, Elizabeth Achilles, pursued this work after his death, creating the World Calendar Association to promote the world calendar. A calendar doomed to fail. It interfered with the day of rest. From the Washington Times, we read, though innovative, the Eastman Plan was in many respects rudimentary, failing mostly to account for and preserve the Sabbath. Like many past attempts at calendar reform, the Eastman Plan was doomed by its failure to address religious and cultural concerns. Indeed, one of the major criticisms of such calendar reforms is that they interfered with religious days of rest, which play an integral role in the organization of economic activity of the work and rest of the 7-day week. The unimpeachable solution, the luni-solar barley harvest biblical calendar, and to solve the problems generated by the solar Gregorian calendar and avoid the Sabbath pitfall that plagued the Eastman Plan, we are proposing the only complete, connected, harmonious, and unimpeachable calendar, the luni-solar barley harvest biblical calendar. We invite you to support this movement by distributing the biblical calendar. We have done over 27 million so far since 2022. And we also invite you to visit our other pages of astronomy, the movement itself, and the library. And we do invite you to join in our movement. As we peruse the internet, we found this article that was very interesting, which was actually from 1929, the calendar reform. And you will see here that there is a proposal that is very interesting, and it has to do with world peace. Keep in mind that around 1929, they had just faced the First World War, and there was already talk about and a lot of agitation with the Great Depression and what is to come. Meredith and Stiles write, every opportunity taken by the nations to work together for a common aim makes for peace. It emphasizes the consciousness of solidarity among them. It establishes a new precedent for cooperation instead of contention. Such an opportunity presents itself in the proposed reform of the calendar. Again, the League of Nations, which was changed after the Second World War for the United Nations, was definitely still at it since 1922 to reform the Gregorian calendar. The movement, we continue here, contemplates for the purpose of international conference. All religion too would be represented. Directly touching, as the calendar does, every individual life, it is hard to imagine any other peaceful international enterprise that could interest and impress mankind so generally. So the vision is seen of a new calendar, replacing the many different ones, such that was used at the time in India, China, Mohammedan countries, and Africa, as well as the Gregorian calendar of Europe and Americas. There is a statement here that we want for you to pay attention. Is it too much hope that such a calendar would be universally adopted at once, involving, as it would, the breaking of deeply rooted religious traditions among some people, but hope is high that the Gregorian calendar may be replaced by a simpler and more useful one in the not distant future. Gradually, as our world grows smaller, the remaining peoples would adopt it, just as the Gregorian calendar was gradually adopted in Europe and America until a measure of time common to all the world is attained. And the vision is also seen in the international conference setting aside one day of the new calendar as peace Sabbath for common devotion by all peoples to the ideal of perpetual peace. So now, at the time in 1929, when this article was written, it is not new, you can see by even the format, but this was written in 1929 under calendar reform, and a peace Sabbath was proposed in order to bring all the nation together in peace. What a wonderful purpose, and yet we know from history that this proposal never came to pass. You may want to look as well as this article by Henry W. Bierce, which also talks about the calendar and the reform. The George Eastman also calendar is talked about here, the importance of calendar reform. All of these are around the era of 1922, 1926. The other one was 1929. And of course, we have here, we went into the Google search and we simply put calendar reformed, the League of Nations, 1922, and we have found many pictures showing the League of Nations and the discussion that was going on at the time, very, very important discussion of changing the calendar, changing the old Gregorian calendar, as they called it at the time, since it has been established since 1582, and wanting to establish a new calendar. So we'll let you have a look at these particular picture or images where there was definitely a movement and the churches were involved, and even the Seventh Church was involved into it. But as we are looking into this study very, very much, we have seen how the calendar was presented, the biblical calendar, and basically it was not accepted. That's history repeating itself again. May the Lord bless you as you are wanting to embrace this biblical calendar restoration movement. And as it has started, let it go around the world more than once if need be, so that the whole world will be informed of the true, unimpeachable, biblical calendar, the lunisolar barley harvest calendar.